Hello, everybody. I'm Kip Snow, Director of the Transportation Distribution and Logistics Institute at the Community College of Baltimore County.
Hey, everybody. Mike Singer, Community Manager, Baltimore and Chesapeake Bay Shipwatchers. Welcome to the Shipwatchers podcast. What are we on here? Episode 32.
Correct. It's a snowy one.
Snowy one, yes. Yeah. My neighbor showed up and with the snow blower, and so I ran outside and helped. I was out there for a while.
I did not shovel my driveway this year.
Mm-hmm.
This time I had free labor at the house, so both
Nice.
of the kids got out and shoveled the walk in the driveway. It was glorious. All right, why don't we go ahead and get into our weekly shipping updates?
Mm-hmm. Sure. We always track the truck transactions from Seagert. And so just to give everybody a reminder, what this is the daily average for the week. So when I give you these numbers, this is basically how many truck transactions they had every day on average for the whole week, not the total, just daily average. So 4 weeks ago, 3,478 per day, with 2 days over 3,600. 3 weeks ago, 3,390. Basically the weekend of Christmas, so that was only 3 days, 3,512, with 1 day over 3,800.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big push, but I'm sure they were just trying to get stuff done because they had, I think, 2 days off for Christmas.
Right.
And then the week of New Year's Day, 3,360, with 1 day, 4,028
I saw that.
transactions. Right, but I mean, according to Jonathan, 4,500 is about to become the new norm.
Right.
What, sometime March, April timeframe? Wow.
That's what he was guesstimating.
Yeah, interesting to imagine that, right? After, if you're hitting 3,500, you're doing really good. And
I wonder if they have a calculated capacity.
I would think they have all of that.
That they know how many trucks or how many containers that they can process, and what their goal is, and what type of changes or advancements or investments or whatever has to be made in order to get to that.
And I would think level. How many RTG moves, and how much space they have in the yard, and how many more times they're going to have to play Tetris.
Right.
With all the containers to figure out how to, stack, store, move, get them back out in the most efficient manner with the fewest amount of moves. I would imagine they've already thought of all that. I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't have all that.
Right.
That would be a pretty interesting conversation. That would be an interesting guest appearance if we could figure out who that was.
Yep. Okay.
Your next assignment, should you choose to accept it.
Let's see what we can do, because that's I might be able to get those answers.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that would be cool.
With that, knowing what's happening today with the weather event here in Baltimore, and then you're going to have gate closures and other weather related, transactions. I did see some notifications already today that Seagert's going to be open tomorrow on Tuesday.
Right.
So they're figuring out how to get everything plowed in the street, ready to go. They're not going to take much more time.
Right. We have some action shots. We have some some photos to show of that later on here. So that's going to be pretty cool.
But related to the truck transactions, that's some of these weather events, because there's also a storm coming approximately next weekend, and what that may do with some of the with some of the metrics.
Right. And so just imagine, if you look at, and so, should have this ready to go, like an overhead of Seagirt Marine Terminal, right? You're looking straight down like a satellite view. You've got all these rows of containers, and there's train tracks, and there's,
Mhm.
all these different, areas that they have to be able to move the RTGs and the trucks and the trains. And so you're not just clearing an empty parking lot at a grocery store.
Correct.
So imagine the fun of trying to move this snow and put it, where do you, I don't even, just the logistics of plowing that place is probably
So
interesting.
so when the ILA states that this is dangerous work,
Mm-hmm.
this is an example of that. This is what some
Absolutely.
yeah, this is what some of the work is, and I'm only just uh, explaining that to the general public who may not fully understand what happens on a terminal. But when there are weather related events like this, it does
Sure.
impact the flow of goods, and that's why it's important to look at those truck transaction metrics around those scenarios.
Right. Which brings up another thing that I just thought of is that, okay, we're talking about Seagirt, and that seems to be kind of, I don't know, it's neatly arranged in rows.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Dundalk Marine Terminal is also neatly arranged in rows, but in kind of it's a three-sided, it's like half a parallelogram,
Okay.
and then it's divided into pie slices. So how they park things in that huge area that's Dundalk Marine Terminal, and but over there you've got to drive everything. All right, so now you've got 6 inches of snow. How are you plowing up to and around all these different little sections? And okay, all right, Johnny, which section? What do we put on the ship today? We got to plow this, but not
Mm-hmm.
that, and that, and then you got to get in this stuff, farm equipment or cars, and now you're driving it. All right, so now you're driving up a wet angled ramp.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do they,
It's difficult. Yeah.
right? How the heck did they do it? How the heck did they get all that done? And not to mention the fact, what if the ramp doesn't work?
Mm.
Well, we're going to cover that.
We'll cover that here shortly. All
Yeah.
right. Why don't we? All right. So why don't we go on? There's a you came up with this idea, and I agree. I agree with this.
Mm-hmm.
With everybody doing end of the year countdowns and reviews, like the top 40, top songs and all of this stuff. You came up with the idea of the Port of Baltimore year in review. Are you ready
Right.
for it?
Right. So, yeah, I just thought it would be an interesting idea to just kind of go through the year and talk about significant events. Maybe some will be way more significant than others, but
Sure.
I think each one kind of has their place. Um, yeah. So let's just start rolling through this. So, and some of these aren't necessarily 2024, but I was using the Port of Baltimore magazine. Do I have one? I wanted to grab. Yeah, I don't know where it is. The Port of Baltimore magazine online, which you helped me with because for some reason I can never find the the archive. I
For
can go
anybody,
find one, but I can't find the archive.
sure. So for anybody who's interested, you
Mm-hmm.
can find the Port of Baltimore magazines at at one of their websites, portofbaltimoredirectory.com. And
Mm-hmm.
then so you look under there's a portion called media, and it's just listed right there, and you can get the current issue and all of the back issues to 2011 actually.
Wow. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, so I was using some of that as the source for this list that I'm about to roll through here.
Okay.
So, from the first Port of Baltimore magazine in 2024, Kraus Marine Towing shut its doors late in 2023. So, and I remember this because, well, I don't remember them shutting their doors, but I remember Kraus because you see McAllister and Moran out there, and
Mm-hmm.
then every once in a while there were these older looking tugboats that were a different color,
Mm-hmm.
and not to mention the logistics of, well, who does what when, and who figures that out, and who tells who gets to do what when,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're a small local company and you're working with these two mega mothers, if you will, and how does that all work out?
Sure.
But anyway, so Kraus Marine Towing shut its doors late in 2023. They started in 1989 with an ex-Army 1944 tugboat, which is still working the Caribbean,
Wow.
which is interesting. And at one point had a max of 8 tugs and business in Norfolk for a couple of years.
Hmm.
So, I have a soft spot. I mean, is this really year in review stuff? I mean, yes and no, but it was in the Port of Baltimore magazine. And I have a soft spot for business owners because I was a
Sure.
small business owner at one point, and it's a lot of work.
Hmm.
So, and I'm sure they were doing something they loved, and the whole family was involved, and I guess they kept it going as long as they could.
Sure.
Then January of this year, Seagert reached its highest monthly truck transactions ever at
Hmm.
81,428 a month,
Wow.
right? And so we all know what happened in March. So I can't help but think of the ironies in some of this stuff,
Yeah.
right? You went from, oh my God, we're doing so great. Anyway, here's another crazy irony. February 5th, Jonathan Daniels starts his new position as executive director for the Port of Baltimore. And so he's here for a whopping, 6 weeks? Um, anyway, February 23rd, it was announced that the Port of Baltimore set new records in 2023. So is that really 2020? But
Yeah.
they announced it in one of the magazines, that the Port of Baltimore set new records in 2023 for foreign cargo value, tons of ro-ro, so that's farm and construction equipment, total TEUs, general cargo tonnage, and imported the most sugar ever. So these are significant milestones that happened right before our next item on our list. Just before 1:30 a.m., the MV Dolly hits the western A pier of the Key Bridge and causes the whole bridge to collapse on March 26th. It's weird. I'm just reading a bullet and I'm finding myself feeling a certain
Mm-hmm.
way about that.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and we have the whole recovery of the Key Bridge listed, but we're gonna come back and do that separately. So this should actually be like, maybe we should have put this in the historical thing. So April 26th, not really last year,
Uh,
but the
sure.
anniversary of the Coast Guard Yard opening in 1899, um, as a yard for the Revenue Cutter Service, which was part of the precursor for the Coast Guard. Let's see, what else do we have? And then as we transition out of the recovery of the Key Bridge accident, Colonel Francis Para assumes command of Army Corps of Engineer Baltimore District. And we all remember Colonel Esty Pinchason,
Mm-hmm.
who was a lady that we saw on TV a lot and on the news after the bridge fell as a representative for Army Corps of Engineers.
Right. Right.
And so I think it's significant that there was a changeover
Mm.
after that, a leadership change.
Sure.
On September 13th this year, General Ship Repair, Gen Ship, as some people know, relatively small looking ship repair operation, kind of right there next to Domino,
Mm-hmm.
celebrated their 100th year. I'm just going to go ahead and say in October, the new, well, as they say at Domino, the new sugar shed building was complete. It's not really done. They're not they don't have their automated system for getting the sugar up from the crane into the building, but I suspect that they're using it.
The shed itself is in operation.
I think it is
Okay.
because the ships are spending way too long at Domino for them to not be using it,
Makes
right?
sense.
If they weren't using it, then they would still be running barges over there. Ships would still be coming in at Canton. Now, maybe they aren't, and I've missed it, so I could be incorrect. But it seems like the ships are staying there as and maybe they're manually moved. I don't know.
Okay.
But I think they're using it. And then October 28th this year, so it wasn't that long ago now. We're getting into the end of the year. The first double stack container train from Seagirt, and
Mm-hmm.
remember how we were almost surprised by that, right?
Right.
Because we thought, oh,
It would be a
we got to
while.
get this Howard Street tunnel thing done.
Mhm.
And then remember, we had to differentiate between, well, there's the general overarching Howard Street tunnel project, which really includes like lowering of track and raising of like 20 some bridges from Baltimore north
Correct.
to Philly. And then so what we didn't realize at first is that, oh, they completed all that uh, track geometry changes.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can close down Howard Street Tunnel and run the double stacks north to Philly across the northern edge of Pennsylvania. It's like an extra what do we come up with? An extra 3 days?
Something like that.
Yeah. But we're able to get the double stack started a little earlier.
And this solution is just a temporary solution until the tunnel is completed, and it's because of a special agreement with CSX and Norfolk Southern on track sharing usage during this time period.
Right. Because I'm kind of a railroad guy, but I don't firmly understand. But I think there was no way for them to get. Gosh, that doesn't. I don't know. There was no way for them to get the all the double stacks to where onto the track that they needed without going across the Norfolk Southern right away, for lack of a better
Correct.
term.
Right.
You know, how many times you heard Mike say this? Gee, I need to learn more about that. I need to investigate that. We need to talk about that in a future podcast. October 29th was announced the 147 million of federal funding was announced, including electrical upgrades and Dundalk Marine Terminal berth upgrades, which they've been working on, right? They're going to do 11. They're going to work on 12 and 13 at some point. They already did 4, 5, and 6, and I think they need to do 1, 2, and 3. I thought they already did 1. Maybe it's just 2 and 3. But they're constantly working on that. And then I guess all the berths will be upgraded at Dundalk Marine Terminal at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing I have on my list, and I feel like what did we miss something? We're ending the year with November 5th, significant events, but Carnival announces the 5-year contracts extension with the port with a 5-year option. So that's pretty cool. I mean, they've been here for a while. And I guess nothing happens in business without a contract. So for them to re-up and commit to the Port of Baltimore for another 5 or maybe 10 years is a great thing.
Yeah, that is impressive. What I just kind of collectively kind of thought about or put together as you were reading through this, and the viewers don't have the privilege that we have our podcast speaking notes here in front of us, but
right.
there was a significant, we've I know that you're about to go in and talk about all the dates surrounding the bridge
Mm-hmm.
collapse, but
Mm-hmm.
it looks like it's significant as far as points of importance or dates or those types of situations. But there was a significant amount that happened in the port that wasn't bridge related. Just and
Right.
that was everything that you just read off that or most everything had nothing directly related to do with the Key Bridge incident. This is
Right.
all major impacts within the port of Baltimore. That shows the significance of what the port does, what the economic connection is,
Mm-hmm.
what the uh, what the importance of its existence is. Even with the Key Bridge not being mentioned, you could hear all of those points of importance. So I thought
Yeah.
that was kind of my takeaway from that.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah, thank you. And then it makes me think, what would that list have looked like without a good 2 or 3 month chunk taken out of it?
Right. True.
You know.
True.
So back to the Key Bridge. We're going to do the Key Bridge event in review, kind of like from a calendar standpoint. So March 26th, just before 1:30 a.m., the MV Dolly hits the western A pier of the Key Bridge and causes the bridge to collapse. 4 days later, removal of bridge wreckage continues. April 2nd, the first of 3 shallow draft channels opens. And well, what does that mean? Well, I think the first one was like 11 feet.
Yeah.
I think the next one was 15, and then what? Yeah. But it's significant to remember that they shut down that whole area from point to point, right? It was if there was a wall there and
Hmm.
you couldn't even go by in your runabout boat with an outboard.
Right.
Nothing was coming through there. And so they found some places like where the bridge was still standing, where the roadway was still existing, kind of like it does now, and surveyed quickly and put out some new buoys. I mean, they had to bring in Coast Guard assets and people and buoys from other places um, to survey and lay out places so that, hey, we can at least get some barge traffic going.
Right.
Let's get something moving. What's the smallest thing that we can, how can we get this started?
Hmm.
And so they wound up with 3 of those um, temporary shallow draft channels. Um, so that was quite significant. 5 days later, removal of containers begins on the ship. So that's about 2 weeks. Um, April 25th, so a month after the accident. So think about that. I mean, we should have a picture showing what that looked like
Mm.
that morning, right? To show how significant this was um, of an event. So you're talking about a month afterwards, the first ship um, leaves the port through a temporary 35-foot access channel. And as somebody who was watching this, you know, sounds silly to say with bated breath, about what was happening and oh, they pulled that stuff out of there and this is going to happen and oh my gosh and what can they bring any ships out and
Hmm.
what depth is it going to be? When is that going to happen? How scary is it to leave some stuff on the bottom and bring your ship across it?
Hmm.
But obviously, they surveyed it. And so I'm going to go ahead and say that if it was 35, whatever was down there was probably at least at 38 or 40 feet.
Right.
Right. And then remember, it wasn't just, oh, you guys can leave today, go ahead. It wasn't like that. It was each ship had to be arranged. Each ship had a tug on the bow and the stern, one ship at a time,
Mhm.
only with permission. So it was a big deal. So it wasn't just people, the ship could just leave under its own power once released by the tugs, like it normally could. And then this was a big deal. 3 days later, a month and 2 days, the first container ship arrived through the 35-foot temporary channel. And I remember that looking, and I think the story is they were just coming to pick up empties.
That's right. Yeah.
And you don't normally see. So if you watch the camera, if you watch the live stream camera, when the ships come in and they're super empty, but they come in to pick up coal, and you can see, you might be able to see, the bulbous bow like sticking out of the water
Hmm.
as they're coming in. You never see a container ship that empty.
Mm.
Well, we did that day.
Interesting.
Yeah. So here's the thrill of the first container ship. And we knew it wasn't going to be a big one. And then that thing is coming in riding so light
Hmm.
that it was really, it was a fantastic, triumphant scene to watch it.
Sure.
But it was interesting to see it like, okay, but this doesn't look like container ships that I'm used to seeing come through the port. Um, let's see what's next. And then finally, because people were losing their minds because they couldn't move their boat through. And let's be fair, people are used to moving their boats through,
Sure.
right? And just go where you want, go see your friends, go for a cruise, go to a restaurant. So people like to move their boats back and forth. Like some people would keep their boat somewhere else. And then in the spring, all right, now I'm paying for this my slip and it's near closer to the inner harbor, I've got to get my boat in there, or I want to get my boat in there.
Sure.
And then, I mean, I totally get it. They didn't want anybody coming through here. They didn't want any problems. They didn't want any wakes because remember there were all these barges and tugboats and
That's
cranes
true.
and all this
Yes.
equipment working um, and so it really was a significant um, bullet point here when they allowed the recreational traffic to come through.
Sure.
And it wasn't just, again, like with the ship, it wasn't just, okay, start up your 150 Mercury and come hauling through here at 30 knots like you normally do.
Right.
No, you're going to transition this channel that we have marked, and you're going to do it from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and that's it. So, it really was a gradual process. And now that everything's open, I think maybe we might forget that,
Sure.
might lose sight of that. Um, and then May 13th, ACL Atlantic Sun, the first Ro-Ro ship arrives. Now, these are one of those, we've talked about these these G4 conros
Hmm.
that are the largest conros in the world. And so here it is, whatever, 7 weeks later, and they get one of these monsters in here. So that was pretty cool. Um, and then, ironically, on the same day, so that must have happened in the morning because you and I were talking about this offline. I'm like, is this
Right.
right?
Right.
I
Yeah.
found this same date in two different sources with two different events. I'm like, did this really happen on the same day? And that was when the controlled demo of the bridge section on the Dolly. And I'll never forget it because my wife and I are sitting here watching the live stream camera on this laptop on our dining room table, and you saw it, and then you heard a loud boom in the distance, right? And I remember them talking about, oh, it's just going to sound like a firecracker. I mean, I think they were trying to make sure that people weren't alarmed,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think it was a lot louder than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I,
Did you?
I do. I was at work, but you could hear like a slight rumble from where I was at, but I was in a
Wow.
building. But I think that some of the imagery, or the thought process of what people thought was they're going to stick dynamite to the whole ship and it's going to have like a big like mushroom cloud, and like, no, it's not quite. You know, well, that's not quite what the expectation is, but it is significant. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was something. I mean, it's almost like each one of these bullet points is such a big deal because
Right.
it's almost like you couldn't get to the end without any of these.
Correct. Correct.
And, when your whole port is shut down from such a tragic, fantastic event, like every time they move a piece of steel was like, oh my God, we're getting closer. Oh wow, look at that. Oh, this giant chunk that they cut up and weighed 540 tons and
Right.
lifted it with this 1,000-ton crane, just incredible stuff that they accomplished. Um, and then, so a week later, the Dolly was moved from the Key Bridge site on May 20th. And then the next day, the channel deepened to 50 feet and 400 wide. So fully operational two-way ship traffic. And remember, we talked about this because these are the numbers that the pilots gave them.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? And they
Yep.
said, well, what do you need? What do you need for fully open two-way traffic?
Correct.
And they said 400 feet. And then, the Army Corps of Engineers, set a goal of getting to that. So let's see. 4 days later, May 25th, Vision of the Seas, first cruise ship to cruise from Baltimore after the bridge accident. And another big deal because all the cruise ships, well, luckily, none of them were in town that overnight. And I mean, they typically aren't in town overnight.
Correct.
They typically come in the morning, drop off their previous cruisers, turn the ship around, get rid of all the trash, bring in a bunch of more food for the week, all the supplies, load up the ship for the next cruise and leave the same day. So, I mean, typically they're not here overnight ever.
Correct.
Well, it has happened. It has happened occasionally, but
Well, I think with some scheduling related changes, but it's still it's been few and far between.
right. Yeah. Every once in a while, they'll bring a new ship in.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there's a transition from an old ship to a new ship, they might bring it in a day or two early. But yeah, so typically they're not here. But all the cruise ship traffic went to Norfolk.
Mm-hmm.
So people were coming to the cruise terminal here, and I mean, if you wanted to, and then busing them down to Norfolk. And I mean, how much of a ride is that off the
That's a
top of your head?
that's a 4 hour ride
Yeah, on a bus.
on a bus.
Not that. Well, we did do that once.
We did do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we did do that. Wasn't too bad.
No.
Let's see. Then June 4th, the last major piece of steel truss removed from the channel. And I remember that being a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because, there was so much that you couldn't see. And there was so much that they needed to do. And you're just wondering, where is all this stuff? Where is it going? When are they going to get to this section? How deep in the water is that thing?
Mm-hmm.
How much does that weigh? How much can they pick up at a time? And you could see them lift it up part of the way and cut it, and just it was obviously sad, tragic event, but it was interesting to watch them make this port open up again day by day. And then 6 days after that, the federal channel fully opened to original depth and width. So 50 feet, which we had on May 21st, but only 400 feet wide, as the original channel width is 700 feet. And then a couple days later, and this was a big deal because, you've got this huge event scheduled for military ships to come into town for Fleet Week, and are we going to be able to get them in here?
Right.
And so June 12th, some military ships came into town through the newly opened channel. And then the last thing that I have on here of significance is the Ever Forever, which is Ever Forward sister. And we remember how big that ship was.
Right.
So to get the first big container ship in here, a la the way it was before the accident, might be, one of the last significant accomplishments here. So,
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I have for the Key Bridge event in review.
So quite a number of what I would say major events, major situations that helped shape who we are and what, the importance of the port. And it's, yes, we did have a major event that took place. So what locally, impacted, but also globally impacted with the bridge. But there's lots of other things that have taken place of importance. So I think that is important to recognize and understand. Speaking of the Dolly,
yeah,
you have some updates on the Dolly.
Yeah. So
Now,
from some of our
before you get into that, I want to make a clarification. I'd like to clarify that we're talking about the Dolly that was here in Baltimore, container ship. Let's not confuse it with the Dolly, which is also a Barbados flagged bulk carrier ship that's actually en route to Russia right this minute.
Yeah.
I came across that sometimes multiple ships carry the same name. I can't imagine that when we say the Dolly, at least here locally, that we're referencing the bulk carrier that's out in
right. But yeah, back to the MV Dolly.
Correct.
So Maersk says that she's doing Hong Kong January 14th. So,
wow.
So supposedly she is in dry dock right now.
Okay.
And so, the folks that hang out in the live stream camera chat on YouTube are some curious folks, and they can figure out some stuff.
Okay.
And, so we're like, okay, well, how far is it from the city where it is to Hong Kong? And what's the ship's average speed? And so we're like, this thing's got to be done here soon. I mean, if it's doing Hong Kong on January 14th, they got to be, rewatering the dry dock probably on like the 10th. This thing's got to be floating on the 11th. It's got to be in Hong Kong like a brand new ship, back on route.
Wow. So that's the route. That's the next stop in the route. Not, hey, we need to take it to Hong Kong to do more work.
We think.
Okay.
So it's on the Maersk website.
Yeah.
And they have their schedules on there. So Hong Kong on the 14th and on to Shanghai and South Korea before arriving Balboa, which it says west end of Panama Canal, which on February 18th, which I haven't verified that. That kind of
Hmm.
got me curious, and I was like, all right, I'm the kind of guy. I'm a map guy, so I hear a name and I get curious, and the doggy head tilt goes, what's going on? And then I have to pull it up on Google Maps and go, all
Hmm.
right, let me just figure out where this is. And I meant to do that, but I didn't. But yeah, so that's some news.
Okay.
And so all along we've been thinking, because there have been other ships and other accidents where and the ship gets towed to dry dock, and there's a whole new bow section like that they had already made ready to go.
Hmm.
They cut the old one off and weld the new
Drop
one
the new one
on,
in.
hook
Yeah.
all the pertinent things up, you
Well,
know.
I mean, if you look up on Facebook or whatever social media, and they have the pictures of ship construction, especially the cruise ships, and they float them in sections already built, and then they just weld them together, and it's done.
Right. Yeah, so
I
yeah,
would be.
that's a
I
great
would.
point. So when you're thinking about that, oh, we're just doing a bow section like we always do. What's the big deal,
Hmm.
right? So,
I'm curious what they did, and
mhm,
during that during the time between the accident and it actually going into dry dock, whichever type of repair it was, how, how did they figure out what needed to be done to the ship? Because it can't just be just the front end. I'm hoping that they went and changed out the electrical panel.
well, this brings another point that supposedly, right? So remember when we talked about that terminal block,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we had the diagram and the part number,
Right.
right? And that was a significant player in that whole electrical problem that caused the accident. And then it was said that all these ships are wired the same way with the same components, all
Right.
these sister ships. Meanwhile, the sister ships keep coming back here. So, you know, as the sister ships come back, are they having them inspected at least once to
Is
make
it?
sure that,
Yeah.
or, do they have, customs people or whoever, that roll up and go, okay, Maersk Shams, who has been here plenty of times since
Mm-hmm.
then. All right, here we go. You guys got to inspect the electrical control room again. Yeah, yeah, I know. I'm curious, how does all that work?
Yeah. How does
What's going on? What?
what's the role and what's the process?
Yeah.
Quite interesting. All right, we'll have to we'll keep track of what that's because now I'm curious also.
Mm-hmm.
What where they are at on the 14th and see if they actually roll out.
Mm-hmm.
In other Port of Baltimore news, we got a couple of other things that are transpiring.
Yeah. Would you
Um,
go ahead and read through some of that?
so
So I'm gonna share my screen
as
here.
you're sharing your screen, I think the first thing you're going to pull up is the Maryland Port Administration operations personnel have been working through the night to clear our terminals as quickly and safely as possible. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're in and around what's going on, yes, we've got snow. Everybody's got off from work and school and whatever else they're doing. So
Mm-hmm.
we're waiting for this storm to ramp back up this evening. So that means that the
Mm.
port workers, the ILA, the heavy equipment operators, the operating engineers, they're all in amongst the mix here and doing the terminal plowing, so that they can get the God. Look at that.
Right? I mean, there's some good pictures here. Yeah, and and so here's the back end of a probably a state pickup truck or whatever, or yeah, and you're just like, okay, so they're obviously, this is a just a big giant parking lot. This
Right.
is I would imagine this is Dundalk Marine Terminal, not
Mhm.
Seagirt, and so okay, this place is full of trucks and cars and construction and farm equipment. And so, well, maybe you don't have to worry about the farm equipment so much because you could probably drive that stuff through 2 feet of snow.
Sure.
But, how in the heck do they get this place ready to be able to just roll 500 pieces on or off of a ship?
Right.
Right. It's interesting to think about.
So even the terminal operators and the managers for those terminal companies,
Mm-hmm.
they have a plan that they have to go through. So when there's the snow related events like this, they have standard operating procedure they go through, and they prep the vehicles, and they get the vehicles organized in a certain manner to allow for the maximum amount of ground space to be cleared at once. So you can see it in this, even in this operation. These are you look at the logo on the side of the truck. These are Port of Baltimore trucks, and so they have
Yeah.
those are state employees who are probably operating those vehicles.
Yeah.
With,
State government tag SG.
But they got the Port of Baltimore logo on the side. So these are terminal trucks, but they've got to clear the terminal just like the rest of the city and counties. Yeah, look at that.
And even for us, the two guys who are always talking ship, right? Even we may forget for a second. Oh, it snowed. While they're plowing all the roads, I'm either outside sweating my butt off in my big jacket and my skull cap, or my kids are cleaning my walk off or whatever. And
Right.
we've got how many thousands of square feet to clear off so that we can have commerce operate at a normal rate. So we can get things done. Look at that's cool. That's cool.
That is a cool shot right there with the two trucks coming around the.
Mm-hmm.
And this is at Dundalk Terminal with the ARC ship right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. Snow was coming down heavy at that point.
Yeah. Let me see. Oh, next
All
story.
Right, so work continues to bring the new sugar shed online.
Right.
All right. I'm glad that you explained that to me, because if I had read through that going, why does he have new written here on
wrong
the
with
script?
this guy? Did he have like Tourette's while he was typing or something?
No, so Domino Sugar is really moving forward with that. It really is a kind of a cool looking shed there with the designed roof on it, but that's going to be on purpose because of the design and the conveyor system that they're putting in. They're lifting the conveyor pipe equipment to make the connections to the pier.
Yeah, now look at this.
This is particular shot.
Yeah, you're like, it's just a crane. Well, hang on.
As we zoom in here, the picture that you have is a McLean crane about to lift a tube that's, well, with the person standing next to it at probably 6 foot tall. That's probably 18 to 20 foot tall pipe. The diameter of the pipe.
Yeah, and we have more pictures. Look at that. It even has a catwalk inside of it, so you can walk through and I guess service. I guess they're going to have belts that go over these rollers. I guess.
I see. And the catwalks on either side of it.
Right. And so, then I wonder, are these just rails, or do they carry something that they have to like connect with, like a fitting?
They connect together when they go to connect.
Is there something that's running through here besides sugar?
I think it is, and I can't imagine. I mean, I can't think otherwise. But to have a covered conveyor system like that makes sense, because you don't want the weather related elements.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And then in my head, oh my gosh, who are the people that design this stuff? How long have they been talking? what was, how far back were you talking with the consultant that came in
Mhm.
and helped design and put all this together and think about, all right, how are we going to do this? And how are you going to run these belts? And how big of a piece can you lift and put together? And, somebody's got to spec the bolts to make sure that they can hold all the, and you've got, how much does one of these weigh?
Mhm.
How much support, like if let's say if it was a roller coaster, where are the vertical supports to support all this stuff?
Right, right.
Everything that goes into designing it. And well, we're not even thinking about that now because, oh, the stuff's here, let's just put it together.
Sure.
But I'm just, my brain can't help but go there. What went into all the decisions that enabled these pieces to show up fully ready to go. Well, let's
Sure.
bolt it in place. And yeah.
And to really put it like, I was in looking at this picture on the screen. It
Mm-hmm.
it looks smaller to me than what I was actually thinking. But when I
Mm-hmm.
referenced the, hey, look how tall the thing is compared to the person standing next to it. Now that's
And
that thing's what, 20 foot across. That's big enough for a person to walk
right.
pretty
I mean,
easily on that catwalk.
there's got to be 6 feet right
Correct,
here.
correct.
You don't want
That
people walking through here hunched over for
right. This
hundreds of
thing's
feet.
massive.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's another one that was just sitting here, and then
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
So obviously there are some attachment points here. Can you see these?
yeah, I see that.
These like gussets that have been welded in here. So these are obvious attachment points. And then
Little
here's a
ventilation.
ventilation because you don't want another sugar shed to burn down,
Correct.
right? And I think that that's where it started.
Uh,
I I'm not.
don't quote you on that. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where it started. So, in the transition work area. Look at this,
Oh wow. Okay.
right?
So from the outside, that thing just looks like a big tube, and you think, oh, maybe it's just
Mm.
vacuum, or no, it's a significant conveyor system that's built in on the inside of it. Okay.
Right. And now you've got to figure out how to get all this stuff lifted into place, and then where does it go? And it's got to go around all these other structures that have been here forever. Place has been open since 1921. That's how long they've been bringing ships in here. So
Yeah.
there's a lot going on. Um, so here's what I was thinking. I need to get Mike Wickline to get his camera stuff, and let's go down there and talk to Mr. O'Malley and have a tour and talk about everything that went to putting this back together. That would
That
be
would be a cool documentary.
that would be a great segment.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Let's see what else we have. Ah, this might be. And then what else? What's the next story there?
So the next story with your pictures is this is based on a real life supply chain scenario. So it's 5 p.
Hmm.
I'll set the stage here. How about
Yeah.
that?
Before we change the picture, you give us the background.
So it's 5 p.m. on New Year's Day of 2025. So
Mm-hmm.
your customer needs to move product through their supply chain. And so the problem is the ramp lowering system that allows for unloading is damaged. There's no simple way to safely deploy it to move the cargo. You need to meet a schedule. The clock is ticking. Who do you call? Well, if you're the General Ship Repair Corporation, McLean Contracting Company can help. And so here the solution was McLean's business development manager, David Kimberly, takes the call on New Year's Day, and the next morning at 10 a.m., They take their 200-ton capacity Whirly Baltimore crane and the crew, crew mobilizes to the location, attaches the rigging, and provides lifting assistance to unfold the ramp onto the pier. You and your customer are back in business by lunchtime.
And note, this is the same crane that was doing the work
In the previous picture that you
at
just showed,
Domino.
at
Yeah.
Domino. So they just floated it down the river and said, "Yep, we'll be glad to
Yeah,
take
we
care
can
of
do that. We can help you out with that.
it." Yeah.
And then you can see here, because this is, it's an articulating ramp, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when it's up against the ship, it's like this. It's kind of
Flat.
folded in half.
Mm-hmm.
And as it comes down, it also opens, right? And then it eventually kind of look like this. So you can see they're rigged up, it looks like, in two different places.
Yeah, I see that from the top and the side.
Because now you've got to lift.
You got, not only do you have to
Wow.
lift, you have to lift up, but you have to push. You have to do two separate functions. You have to lift up and out
Wow.
at the same time to bring it
Right?
flat.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
So was it stuck in the closed position?
I would assume so.
Okay.
I
Or
would assume so.
maybe the picture on the left-hand side with it locked in the closed position would.
I mean, that could be before and after.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right? Yeah. Well, I think the way it was worded, maybe I just assumed it was in the closed position.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't. But yeah, that's so. And to get back to our generic purpose here, right? I like to joke around and say that the port certainly isn't a cottage industry, because it does $15 million a day,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it affects hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs. But a lot of people don't know a whole lot about it.
Correct.
All right, so let's talk about the head with the big microphone in front of his face right now, who actually pays attention to this stuff and watches this stuff happen on the camera probably almost daily. I had no clue that this happened. No clue. Until one of the guys that I think works with one of these companies, shared some photographs, and then these photographs right here are actually from McLean Contracting's Facebook page.
Sure.
I think this morning. So, yeah, quite.
So I think just to kind of reiterate your point, people may understand, hey, Port of Baltimore, cargo ships, containers, longshoremen, but this is also the work that takes place down at the port.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes things don't flow smoothly like you plan, and that you have to go and help out or do things outside of the norm in order to conduct business.
Right. And then, now multiply this times hundreds of ports across the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're scheduled out probably a month or two in advance as a ship, at least. Right.
You don't have time to be out of service. You have to be repaired at that point. I mean, so that you can continue on with your voyages. Sure.
Right. And what I'm trying to get at is, and then, there's a schedule, and then the ship's late. Well, gee, why is the ship late? Well, I mean, it could be a myriad of things that go wrong that happen something like this, because what rarely happens, on the live stream camera, somebody will order a car, and somehow they will find their way to the live stream camera and the YouTube chat. And so they'll start asking a whole bunch of questions about, well, where is this ship, and can I see it unloading, and well, what terminal is your car being unloaded from? Well, we can't see that, sir, from so right. And so where's my brand new car that I'm super excited about? It's been on the ocean for like a week, and why is the ship late? I mean, this is just one example.
Correct.
right?
Oh,
All right.
yeah. Those are some great pictures. This
Yeah.
episode. Yeah. All right, the last little part of Port of Baltimore news. So the John W. Brown sent out some correspondence right before the new year that they are in their fundraising period, and they have a goal to raise $200,000 for ship preservation.
Mm-hmm.
So we were back in the spring. We talked about them being in dry dock and having some work that needed to be done. So this is part of that campaign. They have in with their request for donations. They released their upcoming cruise schedule for the public. So if you are interested in participating with the John W. Brown,
Mm-hmm.
they have the Dress for Success cruise coming up
I know. That's
May the 24th.
different.
So May the 24th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So this is an all day cruise. They want you to come
Mm-hmm.
dressed in your 1940s and 1950s clothing
Yeah.
and
I know
cruise.
some people that will be there.
There you
I know
go.
some people that are into that. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so they're going to do they mentioned so for you could be on the ship for bay breezes, delicious sea rations, and entertainment. I hope that it's not sea rations. I hope it's whatever they cooked on our
Yeah.
cruise.
Yeah. This is
It
the moniker,
was pretty darn good. Yeah.
the appropriate moniker. Yeah.
So May the 24th is the Dress for Success cruise. September the 24th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So this is a daytime cruise. Also, veterans
Mm-hmm.
and merchant mariners cruise with your family and friends on a Liberty ship. So if you're interested in, if you're a veteran, this may be
Mm-hmm.
something for you to take advantage of. It says that they be aboard the Liberty ship for fall crisp air with breakfast, deli lunch, live entertainment, and a memorial service.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm.
in November the 14th through the 16th. So this sounds like an overnighter. This is the Steam Experience. So this is a weekend aboard the ship. Original crew cabins, inclusive of accommodations. I thought it said exclusive accommodations. I go, where are they sleeping? Where they got the exclusive accommodations? Meals
You
and
get to climb
parking.
down that 30-foot ladder into that hold and sleep next to that truck.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Topics include marine boilers, steam cycle, value maintenance, and much more. And so, if you are interested in attending any of those events, visit www.ssjohnwbrown.org. You can register for those events. And if you just want to just outright donate, you can go to the website and do that also.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Moving on to the ILA strike.
Mm-hmm.
So negotiations are scheduled to resume tomorrow, January the 7th. I have noticed.
Gives them a week.
Yeah, it gives them a week to go and get this thing ironed out before the January 15th deadline.
Mm-hmm.
I know that some of the steamship lines, some of the carriers, that are part of the USMX, are making some pre-planning statements. Maersk released a press release urging container pickups ahead of a potential strike. So I'm kind of reading between the lines here and saying, if the carriers are talking about it, you probably need to be prepared for the potential of an event. And that some of the carriers have already announced that they may or will be issuing labor strike fees associated with the strike either during or after to recoup costs, potential costs associated with disruptions to based on labor.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a number of things that are moving around. I think after tomorrow, we really should have some information at least coming out through the different pressers of what some of the stances are and kind of what the expectation will be if this thing is going to get resolved or not,
Mm-hmm.
or if we've got to go into a period of strike again.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And upcoming events, what do you got?
Yeah, so the just coming here in January the 15th is the Women's Traffic and Transportation Club of Baltimore. If I would say if you're male or female, you'd want to go
Yes.
and be interested in joining this group. They are over 90 years old, but they have periodic meetings. They bring in guest speakers. This particular one, Jonathan Daniels, will be providing a state of the port address to the club.
Mm-hmm.
Friday the 17th is the Baltimore Port Alliance General Meeting at the pilot's office. And then February the 6th, and this is early in the morning, is a breakfast meeting, BWI Business Partnership Signature Breakfast. Jonathan Daniels is doing speaking on the port's recovery after the Key Bridge to the group.
Now I'm half joking here. No wonder we can't get him on the podcast.
I know, he's doing everybody else. I know. That's all right. We'll get that.
All right. So for our Port of Baltimore history segment, what did you dig up?
I was digging. I went Scooby Dooing down a particular historical file, and I found this in January of 1730. There were 8 men who met at the north side of the inner basin of the Patapsco River.
So,
do you know where that's at?
The
inner basin of the it's the inner harbor. It's what we know
basically.
It's what we know as the inner harbor today.
Gotcha.
And so back in August of the prior year, 1729, Baltimore Town, and that was the name of Baltimore. Baltimore Town,
right.
was established by charter. So January the 7th, I believe, is the actual date, is when this group met. And they asked a gentleman by the name of Philip Jones Jr. to survey the area and break it up into 60 lots, 1 acre each. And that is the basis of the inner harbor. And so that survey of Baltimore Town took place in January of 1730. And kind of how I mentioned before we started recording, I don't know what kind of surveying I'd really want to be doing outside in the inner harbor in January. So that's, if you put that in layman's terms, that had to have been a significant feat.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
All right, that's all I've got for this episode.
Yeah, I think that's all we got. All right, so as we always talk about towards the end here, Baltimore and Chesapeake Bay Shipwatchers, we have a great website with the live links to the live stream camera, the podcast, swag. We've got some clothing and some other swag items for sale. There's ship schedules, port maps, whole bunch of stuff on the website. Very handy. It's visited by over 200 to 300 people a day now, so people do use it. And we're also on Twix. Shout out Amy Lawrence. Instagram, Reddit, Threads. What did I miss?
You've been doing some work with some of the social media outreach. That's great.
Yeah, sometimes I kind of blast people. I'm gonna,
That's right.
like, okay, let me see if I can get this on every one of our accounts.
Go ahead.
And most of those were at Balto Ches. So, like, if you abbreviated Baltimore on an envelope, and you shortened it up, back when people actually sent stuff through the mail, Balto and Ches, short for Chesapeake. So, Balto Ches is our handle on almost all those, including YouTube. And I just wanted to say, if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be alerted to new podcasts as they come available.
And if you want to listen to the audio version of this, you can catch it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
All right. So let's get out of here.
Yep. Let's go play in the snow. Or shovel the snow.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Like
ready? 3, 2, 1. Happy ship
watching.
All right, everybody.
Have a great week. Thanks for watching.